Hello, today is December 4th, 2006. We're at the home of Mr. George Lane at his home in Fort Collins, Colorado. My name is Brad Hoops. I'm the interviewer for the Northern Colorado Veterans Oral History Project. Good morning, Mr. Lane.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for participating in this project.
It's a privilege, and I get a kick sometimes reminiscing about things that were in the past. And
Very good. All right, well, let's start out if we could. If you could tell us a little background about yourself, when and where you were born.
I was born in Boston, Massachusetts, a family of 6 youngsters, and
What was your, what order were you in that family of 6?
second from the top, there were 4 girls, and that in itself gives you a challenge in life. 4 girls, and the other boy was the youngest, so he was not a big supporter for my status in the family. But it was a good sized family. Just as a little side business, my mother really raised the family because my father, who was a commercial artist, got interested in a redheaded lady in Boston, and the Bostonians. My mother came from a family of about 14, and her brothers were always saying, "Well, we saw George out there with that redheaded lady," and so he went to New York just to, but he was always in touch. He didn't support the family very much, so my mother was the straw boss for 6 kids, and she did very well.
As the oldest son, did you take on part of that responsibility as you got older, or?
It's hard to say. I'd have to see it from the outside looking in, but my mother, I think, favored me because I was a boy near the top, and I did a certain amount of important things. But I was a boy, and she didn't worry about boys so much as she did girls. She had 4 of them, so I had a lot of freedom, and I did it in a behaved kind of way. But the clock wasn't quite as important for me as it was for my sisters, and so it was an interesting youth. And my mother seemed to have, she came from a big family. She seemed to understand that fellas could take care of themselves. You didn't have to lay out their day or anything like that. And if they didn't come in at supper time, okay, they'd get there soon and so forth. So I had some soft treatments, and it was good.
Can you tell us what you were doing prior to joining the service?
Let's see. I had, after graduating from high school, I went to art school because I had a talent in that, and my father helped with the money. So I just really been in a school background, but the latter part of it was art training, commercial art training. I should have been just about ready to get into work in that when the war became closer to us.
Do you remember where you were and what you were thinking when you heard that Pearl Harbor had been bombed?
Oh, it was in Boston, and of course I was just as the entire population of the United States was shocked when that was Sunday out there at Pearl Harbor, and immediately everybody was saying, "What can I do?" And in my case, I thought I had to be in some branch of this service, and I had an attachment, an interest in flying, and I thought, gosh, I could maybe be in the flying part of the armed forces, and it worked out that way. They accepted me, as they did many thousands, and they sent us out to
So
the first step for
did you
training.
enlist, or were you drafted?
I enlisted, yeah.
Shortly after Pearl Harbor, or what time frame? Do you know roughly what time frame that was when you enlisted?
Do you remember the date of Pearl Harbor?
December of '41.
It was December. It was in the spring following that I had signed up to go.
So you enlisted in the Army with hopes of getting into the Air Corps?
I enlisted in the Air Corps. You know, they had their own recruitment apparatus, and a short time after signing up, I found myself in a group of guys that we're all from the Boston area, and they were all packed on a train to go for training, and it was one of those things, a new war on hand, and things moving around. A train that was going to go from Boston to Los Angeles took kind of a slow time getting through other places where trains weren't coming back and forth. But there was a group of, let's say, 200 fellows in the Boston area that said, "I'd like to fly."
And any buddies, or did you know anybody on the train?
Oh yeah, a few were local fellows, but we all became acquainted because we're in that train about 5 days going across the country, but we all got to know each other. And in those days, they had trains that were driven by coal locomotives, and the windows were open because it was the warm days of the early spring, and soot. We were no showers on trains. It just everybody by the time they got to Los Angeles looked like a bunch of little tramps, you know. But they played cards, but the windows of the car were all open and so forth. And it was an interesting first step.
Did your family see you off at the train station? Do you remember that scene at all?
It wasn't too much exciting informality or something. How did I? Boy, those little intricate things escape me now.
Oh, fair enough.
I left from the city in which I lived, so it was just a streetcar ride to get to the place to get on the train. Someone probably, waved at me, and but it wasn't any big.
Okay, so a 5-day ordeal train ride to Los Angeles. So you're in California now for basic training?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's preliminary, like being categorized as far as would this be a good fellow for maybe a navigator or a bombardier or this or that. But it was all Air Force that we initiated our beginning, and of course a number of them wanted to be flying. That was interesting, and so they were designated as the pilot training group, and so they all went off to different fields then for their preliminary training in that particular field.
And what were you chosen?
The Air Force.
What your specialty? Were you?
No, they didn't give you a chance. Just, I would like to fly. You didn't know you're going to try transports or what, but a military aircraft would be your job.
So you were actually chosen as a pilot as opposed to a navigator or a gunner?
Yes.
Or something?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well.
Okay.
Yeah. I was psychologically and in other ways, they had a whole scale to say how fitting are they for a navigator or for a bombardier or an engineer, whatever it is, and we fitted to be a pilot.
Had you ever flown before prior to that?
Only as I think my father took me up when I was about 9 years old on an airplane, and maybe I had two rides, 20 minutes each, when I was younger. But it just I felt inclined. That seemed to be something that I would fit in and I'd enjoy.
Okay, so one split off into to pilot training. Can you talk a little bit about that, where you went from there and your training?
The classification and the earliest training was California, and a good deal of it was in and they have basic state, and then there's the second. There's different steps, and intermediate, and then advanced training. Different planes, different sophistication. But it probably was about 6 months of training to fly a plane, with light planes of different kinds. And then they sent you to the more advanced uh, training where you were with a heavier plane for combat, and that took place uh, in different parts of the country, the West Coast, Idaho, eventually out in Virginia, uh, Norfolk, Virginia. There was a training place there in which they had a training for bombing. I was in a bomber.
At that point, you were
eventually that kind there. Uh, but we would. It was radar bombing. Bombing at something you can't see, like bombing at night, and the radar could pick up a blip that was different than its surrounding, and the bombing equipment would take the plane directly to that thing to drop it at the right place to bomb in the dark. And so that we had that variety of kinds of things, but bombing with heavy four-engine bombers in Virginia. And we were also in a group that had new equipment that wasn't known even to the public, and that was the radar bombing, where it was a mechanical approach, where up to that time an individual would train his machine there, and it would help to direct the plane, but he was in charge. So we had radar bombing, which eventually was used for shipping off the coast of China. They would come down from Japan, hugging the coast of China till they get down far south on the China coast, and then they'd dart over to the Philippines, where the war was taking place a little bit more strongly. But we were in China, so we would go out in the evening, and we'd be all night out over the ocean, and we had the radar to pick up their blips on the ocean, and would bomb the shipping coming in along the coast there.
Let me back up a little bit. Was it in Virginia that you linked up with your crew, or where did you eventually link up with your crew?
It was not halfway, about a third the way beyond that. I remember the first contact with people who ended up as a crew, and it was Utah. Let's see, where's the gambling city?
Oh, Nevada?
Nevada, yeah. We were only there for about a week, but still somehow things sifted out, so you got with a group of fellas that were identified as a kind of a unit, and then we started to go to other fields to be trained as a unit, a crew, and but it was an informal kind of thing. We didn't know whether we'd be together for 2 days, 2 weeks, or 2 months, or 2 years, but we hardly got. We thought it might be very temporary, Hi, how you doing? Where do you come from? All that kind of stuff. But eventually we got well knit together in our training in the United States before we took off for China, and we flew over to China in steps, South America, Ascension Island in the middle of the ocean, Africa, across Africa, and to India, and then across India, and up over the hump and down into China, and there you were. But they saved a lot of transportation money. We flew ourselves over there, and they had. We were at a base field in China, West China, far away from Japanese personnel out in the east near the coast, and then we had forward fields much more closely to the populated east part of China and to the ocean, and the advanced fields. We spent most of our time out of the advanced fields, which were small, and then we come back to base field once in a while. But that was kind of the setup.
How long was the journey from the States to China with all those stops? Do you know how long it took you?
Gosh, I would say probably 3 weeks, something like that. They once in a while they would get a day to stay at a particular point. It was interesting crossing the Atlantic to hit Ascension Island, which was a volcano, I guess, at one time, and it had a runway over a hill, and you'd stay overnight there, and the next morning you'd be gassed up and you'd go to Africa. But it was right in the middle of the ocean, and very unusual feeling. This has been here all this time. In fact, after putting the plane in a parked place, we sort of wandered around the outside of the island, and the fellows that were the officers kind of hung together because we were in different barracks and everything. But we walked out around the outside of this, and the beach sloped down pretty sharp, sand, but into the tall breaking waves, and it was interesting. A lot of crabs walking all over the place. But the four of us were there, and the co-pilot, Frank Garvin, wandered a little further down, and when the waves broke, they were big, and they slid up the hill. And then all the water that slid up the hill slid down the hill. Well, it slid down the hill and carried Frank down the slope. And the last time we saw him, his face was sticking out the bottom of a big wave getting ready to break, and he had the look of panic on his face. And then the wave broke, wham, and then in the foam going up that hill, there's Frank swimming like, and of course we're running across to snag him before he slid on the hill again. But it was a funny thing, because Frank was a self-reliant kind of a person. Never thought he was going to get swept down that hill. It was funny. But anyways, that was Ascension. Yeah.
Wow. And you made stops, and you said in Africa
Yeah.
and India. Did you have a chance? So you must have seen some incredible things along the route, yes? Or was it?
Some from a distance. In India, some of the big Taj Mahal buildings, and other places that you better not have to stop there, because if they got a hold of you, and that anyone that drops in on their country is going to be eliminated right away. And that was in that middle section between Africa and the Asia-India area, where my geography doesn't pop out. Yeah. But anyways,
What was it like flying over the hump?
not threatening, because the plane is able to go, 30,000 feet if it has to, and these would go up around 20. But the trouble there was that there was an awful lot of turbulent weather that would come, and some, you'd hear stories of fellows that had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. The storm just was coming, and they were very violent storms, and they talked about the fact that they'd be trying to climb, and yet they'd be falling down, and they were twisting, falling, and the parts of the plane were twisted out of shape and so forth, and they felt like, boy, this is it. But they get out of the turbulent air enough that they could, change the attitude of the plane and started flying and climbing again. But many planes were killed. That was one of the stories that you hear. A lot of guys got killed in the hump because of the very strong weather that just happened to be in that place. But
Okay. So we got you now in China. If you want to talk a little bit about your experiences, some of your bombing runs, or anything you want to talk about in the way of once you're in China.
We were trained for radar bombing, but not on real targets, just artificial targets. And it was the ocean we were aiming for, and sometimes we'd fly from the rear field, Kunming, or sometimes from the front ones. But we'd be out all night. We'd leave maybe at 6 o'clock, and then over the ocean in the dark, counting only on the radar, and most nights nothing, because there just wasn't that huge traffic. It was just a little group of 7 or 8 ships coming down together.
So your primary targets were shipping?
Ships,
Okay.
shipping.
Uh-huh.
The supply of the Philippines was coasting down from Japan, and if we saw something, we could circle around the outside of it, 50 miles out or more, looking at the blips, saying which ones were the big ones, which ones you would try, and so forth. And then we would bomb. We were trained to bomb at a low altitude, 500 feet. 500 feet is only a 50 story building, you know, and but they didn't know you were coming, because when you're in a boat in the ocean, there's a lot of noise, creaking, they're up and down and everything. So your first run usually was a gimme, because they didn't know, and you drop 3 bombs, and to bracket the ship that you were aiming for, and it was pretty effective. There was one night when we only had enough for like 3 runs with 3 big bombs each time, and that night we sunk three ships that one night, and then if we didn't see any ships on a particular night, we would use our bombs instead of bringing them back home again. Along the coast, there were targets of ship repair places and that kind of thing. Hong Kong was one of the places where they had appointments for war supply and that kind of thing. And Amoy was another city on the coast. So we'd get rid of our bombs.
So primarily the eastern part of China was occupied by Japan, and you guys were in the western part?
Sparse, though.
Oh.
Only where a city there where railroads were going this way and roads that way, they would be there. But China's big, so there was a lot of men, but they were scattered all over the place, so it was kind of thin. And they had a small group of airplanes, and once in a while at our field, one of their fighter planes would come over, because we'd be coming back home at dawn, and out of the darkness would come a fighter plane that had someone called and said, oh, he's coming from the east going west, he's almost over the field in the dark. And then the fighter goes up, and under the plane you can see the fire of the exhausts of the engines, so he could get under the plane and watch those exhausts and follow you into the field. And that way he wouldn't be detected, and also he'd find the place at the right time, the right kind. So sometimes you'd be questioned about your trip and so forth, or sometimes just after you came in, and in comes a little fighter plane and drops bombs along the runway, and they were not very scary, because the bombs were maybe that big, like a piece of sewer pipe with a round nose and a little tail, and some of them they didn't even blow the bomb apart. It would explode, but the nose would blow out this way and the tail would blow out this way, and there's this cylinder, the middle of it still there sitting there, and but they made noise and let us know it was not a threat. But then we'd, after being questioned, we'd go back to the barracks and get a night's sleep and so forth. But a lot of variety in that activity. Different people would ride with us. We didn't all bomb ships. Sometimes we bombed cities or Navy yard. Or we went out to the island off the coast of China. I think Emo, not a city. Formosa, Formosa. And so the Japanese had all kinds of installations out there, because it was out. They took care of ships, a shipyard. There was a big bay on the southwest side of it, back to it, and the word had gotten in that place was filled with naval ships and other ships. Lots of ships were in that big place there, and this is our military force at that time. We were working off the cuffs, kind of, all those ships. Wow! So they made up a plan for hitting that place and sent the planes out that night, and but they were to come in one at a time. It was dark. We were going to do it in the dark, and we knew where the place was, and we had the instructions. You go to this initial island off the coast, and then go straight in for the big city where this bunch of ships were. But it was a party for them because if you were fourth or fifth in line out of 14 planes, you could see ahead of you 5, 8 miles there. This pyramid of light with searchlights all around the thing, pinning the plane that was going over. And he was to go from this island over to the harbor. So they had him in their searchlights all that time, and until he dropped his bombs. And then there's another joker watching and saying, I got to do that. He's got to go to here and go over the bomb. And we're maybe fifth out or sixth out, seventh out. We're thinking, boy, this is going to be fun.
Well, you laugh about it now, but what were you thinking then? Were you worried about the fact that, I mean, you were...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But you don't get in, you don't shudder. You just say, well, let's try to keep your mind on getting the heck out of here and get back home, go to bed. And I think we lost 2 out of, whether it was about 14. 2 of them got hit. But they must have been awful shooters without much help on training their play. But they had all the searchlights and everything. And every one of them, they had maybe 2 minutes of seeing that plane coming maybe at 5,000 feet. Or maybe it was 2,000, was lower. But then we'd scoot. Once we dropped the bombs away, woo, and we'd dive for the ocean where we could get in the dark and everything. But it was that was a unique one where we weren't using the bombing equipment for shipping in the dark, the radar stuff. We were just doing ordinary. We bombed sometimes in the daytime at a distant city or something that someone wanted hit by. It was a small group. The 14th Air Force was a couple of 4 squadrons, each one maybe having 12 or 14 planes. It was a small operation.
Now, when you'd go out on your nighttime bombings of ships, would you go solo or would you go in a formation?
You'd go solo. Yeah, and of course half the guys were asleep. The gunners, who needs a gunner at night? But if they're on the crew, so they have to go just for the fun. And but it from 6 in the evening till 6 in the morning, in dark where it's quiet and the thing is roaring away. I can't pass that without. Our bombardier was Goldie, and Goldie seemed like a young fella, rosy cheeks, and he'd come out in the morning and he had washed his hands, and he's going to get his pay. It's payday, and the guys that had gotten what was left of their pay besides what was at home, they were playing cards to get who's going to get the other guy's money. And Goldie comes out, and he's such an easygoing young gun of a guy, and there's an empty chair. And after 10 minutes of playing, he's got most of the money of the other guys. You think he was a pro? He's not. He's lucky. Well, he's the bombardier anyways of the plane. And but one night in China, it's likely that you're going to get the runs once in a while because you're eating food from fields where cow dung is used for fertilizer. So Oldie was in. I gotta go. And he found a K-ration box that's only as big as a Cracker Jack box, and then he's giving us a report. Okay, down in the bomb bay down there, and he's holding to the side. He's holding on the Cracker Jack box, and excuse me, camera. He's saying, I'm going to be able to get this, and he says. He just discovered that when he does number 2, he's got to do number 1 too, and he, he doesn't have any control. Well, anyways, we have this kind of panorama of dramatic things. People have to go in the dark with a Cracker Jack box and stuff like that. And young fellas get fun out of almost anything. if they're not actually bleeding or
Yeah.
banged up or something like that. They don't dwell on the the heavy, threatening part. They're aware of it, but they're very easily the humor floats around, and they make the most of it most of the time. But anyways, we had oh, it seemed like there were 30
Missions?
assignments.
Uh-huh.
What do they call them?
Missions?
Yeah, missions, and before going back home, and it was a number, so you could keep track, and so anyways, we managed all of that and got back home again.
Were you, when you were stationed in China, did you get off the base into the local population, or did you primarily stay on the base?
Really, I think I could count 3, 4, 5 times we went in town. We looked in little shops. Maybe we got a beverage. Maybe we looked at the Chinese young ladies. But we watched them eating in it because they would hold their plate and they had their chopsticks, and they didn't pick it up, and we they just put it
Shoveled it in.
in, move it in, from the, and we thought it's practical, it's good, but there was only a few times, but we didn't have too many opportunities. We were going here. Some of the advanced places had no cities really. Small little towns might be there, but Kunming was a bigger city. The base back to the west, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was
And your, so you flew your full 30 missions?
yeah.
Yeah. During any of those times, were you ever harassed by aircraft or anti-aircraft or flak? And if so, what was that like?
Yeah. More flak. A few pursuit planes. There was one picture in one of the United States newspapers that showed the bombers over Hong Kong, and they were banking, and they had gone down there, and there was in the picture a fighter plane that was climbing up to shoot at them. Nobody got any more than a couple of bullets into the structure of the plane. Nobody shot down, and it was rare. The Japanese did not pay much attention to the China field. They couldn't do anything about where it was hurting them, the shipping. They tried to bomb the places where the bombers came from, but they didn't have that much to spare. They had a few planes there. They weren't terribly effective. I don't think I knew of anyone that was really shot down by Japanese, fighter planes. They were just the same as us. Nice guys that want to get back home eventually, so I'll do the best I can. And but anyways, that.
Now, you went home after your 30 missions. Had the war ended, or by then was?
No. Let's see. Trying to. You had a limit as far as overseas, and when you did, especially like Air Force, when you finished that tour of duty and back, they frequently would put you in some small field, some privately run training fields for what they call primary training. That's where I went, and I was just given some small duties there until they could put a quota of numbers that could go out each week or month, and then that whoever seemed to have the most history or quantities of this, that, and oh, you can go. So they were in the process early of getting them out, and Air Force guys were pretty lucky in being moved out pretty good, because new ones were coming in all the time. And so I got out before the end, but very near the end. And
Did you take the same route back to the States, or how did you get back to the States?
the same way.
Yeah.
And it's a funny feeling because you feel almost professional. You know, you've been all the trips and the whatever, and it's now time to go. You've qualified to go home, and so but uh, but the way to go home was to go by, I think they call it ATC, but it was the division that transported people this way and that way and this way. And so with strangers, with all these guys, all of them are qualified now to go back to the United States, and there might be 24 or 30 of them, and they climb in this big round belly transport plane, and we're all kind of experienced, and it's night, and on this particular, and you say, I hope this guy knows how to fly this thing. I want to go home, and I don't want to have any things snuffing up. And he's out, and he's testing his the ignition kind of thing for the engines, and you can turn it to one thing and to another to see if you have any faltering firings of the engines. And in the dark, he's thinking, yeah, I don't like the sound of that. You can tell that's what they're saying, because he turned around to come back in again. And we're sitting on the plane like, I need to go to the bathroom. And you know, you just say, I wish I were somewhere else besides here. And then eventually someone maybe put some spark plugs in or something like that. Out in the dark, he goes again, same guy, same plane, anything. You know, just go to the next stop. But it was a series of the ATC, the hauling, transporting people that go to another place. Same way we got there, hopscotching from a city to a city to a city, and it sometimes was a little bit draggy, but it was in the right direction anyways. I was going back to the west, and but a lot of guys doing the same thing. That was one thing about in the service in any service. It's all those other guys. Gee, they seem to be stable and good humor. Well, why the heck shouldn't I be stable and good humor also? And so it was. We did the thing that was supposed to be traditional and absorbed by others, and so why should you be any different and that kind of thing, you know? But it was interesting, though.
Well, let me ask a few questions. We'll continue on your flight home, but let's go back to China. What were your living conditions like? Did you have good conditions as far as sleeping, accommodations, food? What did you guys do on your downtime for entertainment?
Well, as far as the bed, that you know brings a picture, and you slept as well as a Chinese person, see, because you had the same bed that they had, and it was made of like almost 2x4s with a rough kind of rope woven back and forth. That was your kind of mattress, just rope this way, and then a little cotton pad about that thick on top of that, and then regular clothes, and then maybe net because mosquitoes were around, and but that was sleeping, and if that's all you have, you do with it. Now what was the other thing that was the what questions did you?
What about food and such?
Oh, the food was Chinese also, because there was something called the hump, the big mountains between India and China. That's the only way you could get there, because the war was out to the east on the ocean, and the only way you could get there was by air, over the ground, over the hump, and they didn't have any room for food. So we ate Chinese food, which is not bad, but water buffalo, and cabbage kind of stuff, and potatoes, and of course they benefit their growing things with human feces that they scatter all over the place. They have a big pot in the middle of the field, which they throw all of the human waste on, and they put water, and then they spew it over the field, you know, boom, boom, and then the American soldier. So we fared all right, but every once in a while someone would get the runs like crazy. It would some material then gave them the runs, and that was difficult when you were on a 12-hour run in an airplane up in the air. You just don't know what to do but the whole thing. It's like I was saying, Goldie with his Cracker Jack box. That's Goldie was a Jewish young man. He just he looked delicate because of his pink cheeks, blue eyes, and his buoyant look all the time, and he was a funny guy. I've visited him in California. He and his wife, a nice family of kids. He stayed in the service for the amount to retire, so we'd have an income at a certain point. And he stayed in there ever since going in the Air Force. He was in until he reached that retirement kind of thing. So what
with the inability to get supplies and such over the hump?
Oh yeah.
How was as far as communications from home? Were you able to get communicate back and forth, or did you hear much from home and get news from home and get news on how the war was progressing and such?
Yeah. Well, communication. It's a cable that was worldwide. You could use a cable if, you know, in my case, my wife delivered her first child, and I got the news about it by a cable that came into China and somehow found itself to me, and then I sent back a cable to say how happy I was, etc., etc. You could do that, and the regular mail went out with the planes that were going back to India, and then from there they'd go through channels and finally get back to the United States. A slow process. But yeah, you could communicate, and you could even telephone.
Really?
But it was, I guess, through Chinese systems, and you'd think calling from China to the United States would be expensive. Well, Chinese money was that compared to American money. So even if they enlarged it, it was still inexpensive. You could make a telephone call through their normal channels.
Well, let's back up too, and you could tell the story. You'd mentioned that your wife had given birth. Can you talk about how you met your wife? You must have had you married before you left Boston, or can you tell the story of how you met your wife? And
yeah, just one of these stories that you think, oh, that's phony baloney, but my first, let's see, no, it was the most advanced training in light planes when you were just training. It was in La Junta, Colorado, and flying back to the field, we had a number of times looked at that pond down there. There was a green-blue, and we were in the last couple of days being at La Junta, but no more flying training because we had completed it. So we had some time on our hands, and a couple of us, 3 of us, said, let's go out to that lake and swim or get a boat or something like that. We did. And it just so happened that the whole school, numbering maybe 60 kids, was having a picnic there. And so we invited them to go in our rowboats. And in my rowboat, I had maybe 7 kids. And the teacher says, is it okay if I go? Because these kids I'm responsible for. And sure, good-looking girl. And so, you know, kidded around a little bit. I think I fell in the water on purpose for the kids, and I was playing with the feet of the teacher under the water and everything like that. But anyways, it came time for them to go back home, the whole gang, and they had a stake truck with open slats between. All the kids got in the back of that farm country, and look, I see, that's nice, and some voice in me said, idiot, did you ask her for a date? No. And motor of the truck is going to start. He said, "Hey, what's your number? Your telephone number? What's your telephone number?" And she gave it to me, and so I called her later on, and we had a day and some, there was a carnival in town. She lived with a well-to-do farm, elderly couple. They loved her. She was like their daughter. She lived in their house as a teacher in the school system there. And so it was enough that we liked each other. And I went to California. I was in Sacramento, and by golly, she went with her mother out to San Francisco, which is just beyond Sacramento. And one of the children of her mother was having children, so she went with her mother to be helpful. So I'd go to visit her, she'd go to visit me. You know, it's one of those things you say. It's intended, yeah. And so we had a lot of dates back and forth, and Mountain View, Idaho was a short time of being trained there with heavier airplanes. And I called on the telephone and said, would you like to be married? Could you be married now? Would you? Oh, I don't know what I would. I have a job. I'm under contract. Blah blah blah. And she seemed to be maybe inclined. So she went back to the lady, the well-to-do lady she lived with, and she was also the head of the school board and so forth. And she got out of for a short time just to go out and get married, and we get married out there. And then I went to Virginia for training, and she went out there, and the navigator of the ship, his young wife just married, and the two of them met in Chicago and came out to Virginia, and we were in Virginia, must have been 2 or 3 months. We were getting the radar training for bombing at night and so forth. And so we had a little cottage on the beach out, what was it, just northwest of, well, anyways, the coast. I'll go on and on. But the two couples out there, and we'd take the streetcar that would rock like a tinker trolley, you know, all the way going to the field, and the girls would stay there, and we'd get out in the airplane and we'd circle over the little house and then go with our training we have pictures. We were getting so chubby with their cooking. With the two of on the front stairs with a bathrobe kind of, with his belly sticking out, looking like, look at what we got here. But anyways, he had a good time. And it was at that time, just before leaving her, that she became pregnant with our first child. And so it was, but in the middle time, when I was over in China, when I got word that we were a father and mother of our first child, daughter. She lives here in Fort Collins now, and she's been a teacher all her life, retired now. And second child was a boy, and he's successful in oil discovery, making maps and so forth. He's down in Texas, and another daughter is down south of Fort Collins here in Colorado. So we still family. My wife died 20 years ago, I guess. Yeah. And but anyways, it's been a.
So over when you were in the service and you got word that you were the father of a daughter, how long was it before you actually saw your daughter for the first time?
A picture came through the mail pretty quick. Someone took a picture of her when she was in the hospital with a new baby. I had that. And
what was the time period, though, before you actually were home and actually met her for the first time?
It wasn't too long. Well, 6 months maybe or something like that before I got back. After get back stateside, they gave you a chance to get back with your family for a week or 2 weeks or something like that. And so she was actually walking, able to stand up, little tiny tot, but stay, and that was our first one, yeah. And the mother was in Oklahoma, and I was able to be stationed close to there and so forth. But the things started to fall back into shape again.
How, do you remember where you were and what you thought when you first heard about VJ Day, when Japanese surrendered?
Oh gosh.
Or even when they talked about the atomic bomb? And
It was in Boston where I grew up, because after getting out of the service, we went to Boston. That's the most security we had. It was my family, and we lived with them for 2 or 3 months, and then we got a little apartment upstairs in a private home. And I went to art school, preparing for work later on. So I was, and to get the art course completed, seemed like I was like 2 or 3 years of training, and then I became an art teacher in a school system in New Jersey.
were you able to take advantage of the GI Bill to use for your art training?
Exactly, yeah. Now, Connie has a telephone upstairs too, so she should answer it if she does now. There she is now. But okay, but it's pretty much the story of most guys. Here and there, you'd have a friend, an acquaintance that was kind of morose, but most of them were pretty balanced, pretty steady, pretty good humor. That age, guys like to play jokes on each other. One thing that many things would come out of mind, but in the barracks that built all over this country in a hurry, and but one guy that a good sleeper, everyone knew that he was a good sleeper, and so they quietly, 4 guys picked up his cot bed that's only so wide and so long, one in each corner, take him out the door of the barracks that was all 1 floor, and they walked 7 blocks away to the parade grounds where you march around this big, like a football field, and they put his bed down in the middle of the night in the middle of that field, and they quietly went like that. And there was no great publicity about what his reactions were, but he got surprised. That's guys. What guys do to, the jokes that they play, they're endless, repeated over and over again. And guys learning from other guys, and they'd get a condom, a rubber, and fill it with water about this big, and tie off the neck of it, and then they'd put it in the middle of his bed, which is only that, and the string that they had on it, they'd tie it to the foot of the bed. And so the poor guy would come in and he'd say, "Who's doing this?" Because here's this big hump in the middle of his bed, and he thinks he's just going to clear it up, whatever. So he reaches from the top down and gets a hold of it and to pull it out, and he breaks it. Invariable. But anyways, that kind of stuff goes on and on and on.
You said you kept in touch with your bombardier over the years. Did you keep in touch with any other crew members through the years?
Yeah, one died shortly. A co-pilot, Frank, died shortly after. He stayed in the service, and he was shuttling used planes that they were putting in golf balls somewhere in Kansas, and he died in flying some of those. That's Frank. Goldie is the bombardier, and we've met several times. And Goldie, Frank, Garvin, the co-pilot. No, that's the navigator. Garvin, we've never had too much contact. He's in Chicago, a little bit in the early years. And Goldie, Frank, and that's the 4 officers, and then the engineer. Yeah. Huh? I don't know where we were.
Yeah. Oh, we were just talking about various crewmen, and I think you talked
Yeah.
about.
The offices where I lived in the same barracks.
Yeah.
Uh, can I tell you one incident? Just
Sure.
because it's colorful. It's usual. But in China, they would get a quota of booze once in a while. Maybe it'd be 3 months or 4 months between the next bunch, and they couldn't just divide a small amount to every single guy. So they'd have a party, and they'd get some foodstuffs, and the officers would have the officers' clubhouse right next to the barracks, and the barracks were mud buildings, you know, just small, but the big building where they had the eating and social things. So you go to the thing dressed up in your best clothes, like you're going to a parade or something, because you want to look good and feel good. And of course, a lot of people are saying, where's the booze? Where's the booze? And of course, everyone got small glasses when they first went in for entertainment, and some guys were just asking for another little one, and they never did get to the food because they would overdo. And I was halfway that way, but the guys on my crew decided I should go back to the barracks. And so they're escorting me back to the barracks. One of them is, and it's, 500, 600 feet to the barracks. Big open dirt yard kind of place. So he's walking me across, and the co-pilot, Frank, who's the independent, single, good-looking young fella, he's chasing the bombardier with a jeep, which was parked in front of the place where they were having the party. You get in, and he's going in a circle, and I'm in the middle with the guy that's escorting me home, and there's this jeep going around chasing Goldie, and the guy that was taking care of me deserted, and I'm standing in the middle all by myself, not knowing what's going to happen with this situation, and Goldie running ahead ran in the back door, which is just a house door, you know, in the mud building, and Frank's right after him with a jeep, and he's going to drive right into that barracks. Only it was built sturdy enough that he went wham, dust all over the place. And what a party! But anyways, okay, somebody I was not in the condition to remember all the details, but someone must have just let me lie there for a while they get the jeep out of the way. I found myself in bed, and I thought, doggone it, that we don't have a party very often, so I'm going to go back over that party. And I end up with my just underwear to go join the party, and they haul me back home again. That doesn't happen too often. I think that was just one jolly good time. And they had a lot of good food there. The guys that were sensible had good food. Anyways, that's anecdotes, little pieces that go in with the rest of this stuff. It wasn't all somber worry or anything. A bunch of wacko kids sometimes. Anyway, nice guy. Everyone got along well. Yeah.
Did it make it easier? Were you homesick at all, or did it make it easier because you were in the same condition with everybody else? Or
yeah, that's it. If he can do it, and he can do it, and he can do it, I can do it too. And just do what's expected. It's all around the world, same way.
Yeah.
Guys from similar cities, similar family things, and so forth. You do what is expected, and don't bellyache or anything like that. You know?
In all your travels during the war, did you ever bump into anybody from home? Any old buddies? Any bases?
Yeah, in China.
Really?
Yeah. Fellow from my own town. He was in another main office, and he came to give us a little talk, and I said, "Oh, I know that guy," and he saw me, and I know that guy, and so we just ended up in China at the same place, and we'd gone to high school, but you know, in the same time.
Wow.
But it's
How do you think your war experience affected your life? or changed your life or played a role in your life?
Uh, well, that would be a big sheet.
Yeah.
But first of all, you get respect for the population of this country in a general big way, because what they did and how they did it and successfully did it, and with enthusiasm or vigor, anyways. Then the because I was with fellows most of the time, the guys had a stalwart kind of a nature, that wherever they were, they would be a kind of a family, and they fitted together and had reasonable attitudes, and the war itself, the public information kept us informed with the fact that this is unfortunately, but a worthy war, because boy, they just whack the heck out of us, and you just don't turn your back on that, so you just carry it the best you can. So a lot of facts of life, and you become one of a population where expectations just fall on you, and at that age, and being an American, you're resilient and good natured, and I never was with a bunch of guys that it wasn't someone doing tricks, you know, funny things. One thing flashed into mind: Texas guys are the funniest guys. And one guy, his last name was Tate. We used to call him Tate. I forget what his first. We were on a train going from one city to another city for training, and he was in his uniform with his hat and foot formal. It stopped this town, and maybe just for 5 minutes, but he's going to get some food, and he jumps off and runs in the direction where he thinks is a store. And doggone, they start making noise like all aboard, and Tate's not in sight, and you start to you hear the thing creaking, and you look over there, way over there with two big bags is Tate running, and the train is gathering speed. He's running with his two bags, but he was that sophisticated Texas kind of a guy, and Texas guys are they're funny. They're performers. They do almost anything with ease. But he caught the train and he had his food and everything else. But I always remember Tate, a good-looking guy. But anyways, it was that kind of thing. You gain a feeling of the population of the United States, cosmopolitan, similar. Humans are here or there or whatever, and we were all in a family kind of thing, and it was.
How was the transition from being in the service, military for that long, transitioning into civilian life? Was that much of a transition for you, or?
Well, probably a little different than some others, since I was married as a change in the midst of it, and had one child overseas, and so I had to be serious quickly, and that was hey. I had to get. You feel like you've been gone for 3-4 years, and you got to get your skills up again. So I got get back to school and get equipped, and as it turned out, both my wife and myself, with training, we became teachers, and we were teachers for 20 years in different capacities and so forth. And we retired together early, and with three kids, and but there was it was for me, getting out was just jump to something a little tougher to get back into the swing of the other world, and get to it. And it took time. It took 3 years of renewing education and getting the local job. My wife and I both got a job at the same time, and but anyways,
Yeah.
I've been very, very fortunate in so many ways. With family and circumstances, and it's well.
Yeah. Well, as we start to wind down this interview, is there anything that I didn't ask you, or anything else that you remember you wanted to talk about? And is there any closing comments you'd like to make?
That is an open door.
Yeah.
Not knowing what we might talk about, I had written some things here. I don't know if there's anything in there. I don't. Well, I feel like I'm Mr. Average citizen, because everyone is a Mr. Average citizen. And I think all the things that were experiences and understandings, attitudes, and everything else, I think they're 90% pervasive to everybody at that time, because we were not just getting a new job of some kind. We were doing something the whole country was doing, and we wanted to come out on top and make this succeed, and everyone worked at their particular corner, did the best that they could. At the same time, just my example is the example of an awful lot of guys. Life at the same time can continue on another path. I married, got a first child, get out, carried on, went back to I became an art teacher. It was in junior high and then high school, and but I had a career, and my wife had a career in the same school system, and 3 kids, and it was normalcy. It was very, very similar to so many other people. You could talk about your experiences with respect for the government of the country that could handle that much of a change of status into a war status, and still keep them intact and keep them self-respecting and safe as possible, able to get married if they wanted, and this and that and so forth, and eventually come back to life without having gone through anything that changed you really. You're just a temporary kind of assignment. Well, I also have to put in something that I personally feel, and I really I wasn't taught or brought into the feeling that there is a God. God was always there, but it seems that is it luck, or is it maybe some power, some force, some believing can kind of bring you through and keep you in a kind of a normal situation, because there's a structure even bigger than this structure, and that you're part of it, and it can bring you protection and direction and so forth. So it's a little item in the background. It was never a huge thing, but it was part of the background that added stability. But all American people are capable of having that same stability, because we're fortunate in a country that breeds confidence in the population. Well, I'd like to talk. I think I've been doing a lot of it. Here I am writing down in paper like I got to remember something, and it works out.
Well, very good. I want to thank you for your participation in this project today, and more importantly, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Well, I thank you very much, and it's an epic of not an epic, but an outstanding kind of thing to just to get a chance to talk to someone. You don't talk too much because you can't talk more than that. I babble for probably an hour, but of course I'm an older person now, and it's nice to retrace your steps.
Yeah.
With maybe a different light, but you can get overboard with saying how good it is to be an American, and being brought up by, each one of us can say, brought by my mom and dad and family, and we're blessed in so many ways, and we can handle things pretty well and not be insecure, or you have a lot of assets that you don't know sometimes that can take you through. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And I think it must be fun to. This picture is a conveyor of transportation wartime. Many. This probably the greatest number of four-engine bombers in World War II was the B-24. There was the B-17, also four-engine. It was prettier and very efficient, but this was a workhorse you're looking at here. It seemed to be a easily destructive thing because it just seemed to be lightly put together. It had a hatch that rolled up the side like a roller top desk to let the bombs fall out the bottom. The gunner at the front, there's one at the tail. You can see a little ball turret at the bottom. Above the top of the body is another gunner. And that's the cockpit area, and the bombardier and gunners down here. But they were a dependable plane. Really, at that time, had the most impressive performance in power and altitude and so forth. And they did a good job.
Did you, like many other pilots, did you name your airplane?
No.
No?
Isn't that strange? Well, there's 12 guys or 11 guys, and they all want theirs named after their wife.
Yeah.
But anyways, we never did. We changed 24. In China, you didn't have the privilege of having an airplane of your own that you could call, because it could be this one today and another one tomorrow. So that kind of thing was kept us from feeling this is my plane.
Okay.
This is the crew that stayed together for several months, going out on missions. There are 3, 6, 7 enlisted men, and one is missing. The one that was the hardest worker, the engineer, Clifford, is not in the group, which is unfortunate. But they represent gunners, engineer, and a lot of their names, it's long time ago.
Sure.
So, but anyways, these fellows in the front, the 1, 2, 3, 4, are the officers, the pilot, co-pilot. This is myself, and the co-pilot is Frank, and he's from Chicago, as is Bernie. Bernie's the navigator. Sharp guy, didn't make mistakes, always knew where we were in China, and China doesn't have any road signs to show any kind of location. But Bernie was navigator, co-pilot, and this is the guy that's the bombardier, and that's the pilot. That's myself. This is Goldie. We call him Alan Goldstein. We'd call him Goldie. He didn't like it all the way through service. He says he wished he had another name other than Goldie, and but he was one of our first trips. He he was to bomb a city, and he was so precise. He says I didn't have it right, and over that city where they were throwing up some armament at us, little flashing things. He said, "Let's turn around. I want to come back in and do it right this time." And there was his first trip out. But that's Goldie. He's a cool cat, you know. But that's a good bunch of guys, and we were together for several months over in China, and glad to get back home. Finished all training and got to be a second lieutenant with a brass or gold bar on the shoulder. That's coming home after being over in China for several months and meeting my wife Zora in Oklahoma, where she had stayed while I was gone, and our first daughter, Judith, born while I was over in China. And life goes on, and the military thing is at a close. I was going to work then toward getting out of the service soon.